This photo was taken at our annual vacation in Kansas with our family. It's where every year my family meets up with my extended family, or the rest of my immediate family, really, and we go to this lake in Kansas. It's called Milford Lake. It's awesome, and we go to this resort there for a couple days and just have fun seeing each other and letting the kids play. If you are interested, the June 12th, 2013 Weekly 50 photo is actually of this same water. It's sort of an overview of the whole beach area, whereas this photo is a very tiny view of that beach area. Anyway, it's a cool place. When we did this, we, meaning my brother Tom and I, the kids were out playing at the beach, and Tom doesn't have kids, but my kids and some of the other family's kids were out playing at the beach. And so Tom and I went just off to the side, and we were experimenting with freeze frame photography. I brought my D200 because I didn't want my D7100 to get wet. Even though it's weather sealed, I just felt a little weird bringing that camera down to play with the sand in the lake and all that. So I brought the D200 and the 50, and this shot, it took a lot of attempts, and I had to adjust a lot of parameters. So I just want to speak a little bit about what all went into play, or what all went into getting this picture. At first, I shot from too high of an angle, so I kind of bent over and looked down. I was maybe a foot or two off the ground as we did the first couple rounds of this, where Tom would chuck a rock into the water, a fairly decent sized rock, maybe 5 or 6 inches in diameter, and I would take a picture. At first, I was just too high up, and I didn't like it. All you could see was the water. You couldn't see the background or any other context. And you all know by now how big I am on context for providing better information about where the photo was in relation to everything around it. So I had to adjust my angle of view by laying down on a little small rock outcropping and holding my camera so it was about 3 inches above the water. There's no live view on the D200, so I had to really crane my neck and sort of hover over the water a little bit with my head and arms as I'm holding my camera up to my eye. I also shot from the wrong viewpoint. So initially, I was looking at maybe a 90 or 180 degree angle off to the right of what you see here, and you could see more of the lake in the background. You didn't see the greenery, and so I didn't like that there was not much of a sense of context. I wanted that green background to sort of place this splash in the context of the lake, the broader lake, as well as the green trees and hills behind the lake. So I thought that was kind of cool. I also couldn't predict where the rock would land. Every time Tom would count down, he would say 3, 2, 1, and then he'd throw the rock, and I was just sort of guessing at where it would land, and he used a different rock every time. We eventually decided to throw a leaf or a stick or something into the lake that would kind of float, and then Tom would aim for that, and I would focus on that, and Tom would aim for that, and that's how we would get the shot. I also initially put the splash in the center, so I would kind of frame things so that the splash would be coming right up in the center, and I decided I didn't like that, really. I found it wasn't as interesting. This one, as you can see with a lot of the shots on Weekly 50, the subject is just to the right of center. Here that works because, as opposed to directly in the center, because the rock is coming from the right-hand side of the frame, and the splash is going up and to the left, and you see it sort of exploding upwards and to the left. If it was in the center, it just wasn't as interesting. Here you kind of get the effects of the splash, and you can follow that trail up to the upper left-hand side of these little water droplets exploding out of the water. So all these things we had to learn over the course of 15 or 20 minutes as we were doing this, and it was a lot of fun. I also had my D200 has a motor drive, so you can do continuous high-speed or low-speed photography. Low-speed meaning you set how many frames a second you want to shoot. I just went to high-speed, which I don't normally use. I like to do it manually. But in this case, I had to get as many shots as I could every time the rock hit the water. And I think it's 5 frames a second on the D200, which is adequate. The 7100 is 6 frames per second, or it's got this crop mode where you can sort of trick it into doing 7 frames a second. It wouldn't have been much benefit, though. 5 frames a second was probably okay. I mean, sure, you could do like 20 frames a second, or maybe if you had like a D4S, you could do 11 frames a second, but really 5 was sufficient. One drawback, though, is the screen on my D200 was so dim that I had to put my camera sort of like hold it underneath my shirt and look down to see the results of each shot. It was kind of a pain to do that, and we didn't want to do this whole process of throwing rocks and taking photos all day, so I had to check the camera each time to make sure, or to see if we got a good shot, and if we did, then we would sort of be done. But it took several tries to do that. As I mentioned in the write-up, if you go to the blog and read the paragraph in the blog, this is the second best photo from the day. The best was actually a cool explosion. It was more of like a mushroom explosion, but it wasn't quite in focus. And even though I liked that one better I just think it's a cooler picture, it was more important to me to have tack sharp focus on the whatever photo I chose from the afternoon. If you click on this photo and go to the Flickr page, you can view the full size image and zoom way in, and you see all these little textures and patterns on the wall of the splash, and you see all the tiny little water droplets. And to me, that was the most important thing, is to get the focus right on so that you can see all of the little details of the splash. And I thought that was so cool. So even though this is technically the second best photo in terms of like getting a photo of the eruption of a splash like this, it was the best in terms of getting the focus right on, which was another benefit of doing back button focus. So I could focus on the little floating bit that we threw in the water, the stick or leaf or whatever, focus on that, lock it with the back button, and then shoot away with the shutter whenever I was ready to take the photo as Tom threw the rock in. So another benefit of back button focus, if you're curious about trying that out, see if your camera has it and give it a shot and see if you like it. I was also shooting at f2.8, so there's not a lot of room for error in terms of getting the focus right. f4 or smaller would have been, it probably would have worked as well, but we wouldn't have had that nice, pleasing depth of field. f4, the background would have been much more in focus, and so would the clouds. And I didn't really want that. I wanted a nice sense of foreground and background, and here the foreground at the very bottom is kind of blurred out little. And to achieve that, I had to shoot at a wider f2.8. That just meant there was less room for error when focusing, which is one reason I got the focus wrong on the other shot. Even though I lined it up initially, I must move the camera or something, so the focus wasn't right on. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. Let's wrap this up with a few other bits of information or observations. Some lower end cameras, if you're looking at buying a DSLR, some lower end DSLRs have max shutter speeds of 1/4000th of a second. This D200, as well as my D7100, they have a max shutter speed of 1/8000th of a second. It's kind of overkill. This was actually shot at a 5000th of a second, which is probably a bit too fast, but it's nice to know that it's there if you need it. So if you're looking at doing a lot of high-speed photography like this, I don't know how many of you out there are actually like going to be throwing rocks into ponds all day, but it's just something to consider if you're thinking about a new camera purchase, is these extra things like the max shutter speed. You might say, well, that's never something I'll make use of, but maybe it's worth the extra bit of money now so that 5 years from now, you'll have it when you come across that situation. Or maybe not. It's up to you. I just want you to know about it. A few takeaways from this whole experience. First, I would say don't be afraid to try something new. I'd never tried this before, and Tom and I didn't really know what we were doing, and Tom was nice enough to help me figure this stuff out. So we tried it, and don't be afraid of pushing your gear a little bit. I didn't know if I'd get the camera wet. Oh no, there's a drop of water on the camera. Well, who cares? It's fine. Just wipe it off. But don't be afraid to try these new things, and keep trying until you get the shot you want. If you got a shot in mind, don't settle for something less than what you really want to get out of that photo experience. Finally, I again want to thank my brother Tom, who kept on chucking in rock after rock just so I could get the shot I wanted. So thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate all your help with this.